For 1,000 years, against a world of shifting empires and absolutely relentless enemies, the Byzantine Empire did more than just exist. It endured. It stood like a fortress, a bulwark of civilization that seemed for a long, long time almost eternal.
But here's the thing. This wasn't some accident of history or a lucky break. This was survival by design. It was a cold, calculated, and, frankly, a deeply paranoid strategy engineered to keep the wolves at the door generation after generation.
So how in the world did they pull it off? How did this empire, the direct heir to Rome, manage to outlast so many of its rivals? Well, the answer really lies in three core pillars of resilience, a kind of three-layered defense system that we're going to break down right now: their walls, their fire, and their cunning.
So let's start with the most obvious layer of the Byzantine defense system. We're talking about the physical barrier that made its capital, Constantinople, one of the most famously fortified cities in all of human history.
And you gotta understand, don't let the word walls fool you. We are not talking about a single stone curtain here. This was a complex and elaborate system, basically an apparatus of interlocking death traps, designed to just methodically grind any attacking army into dust. Let's try to look at this from an attacker's point of view. You're not just storming a wall. You're trying to push through four separate, distinct layers of defense, and each one is designed specifically to make you more vulnerable for the next. So your first problem is a massive trench, a moat over 20 meters wide. While you're struggling through all that mud and water, you are a perfect target. There is absolutely no cover, just a relentless storm of arrows and projectiles coming from the walls up ahead. Now, if by some miracle you actually survive the moat and you get past the smaller outer wall, you're now faced with the main event, a sheer cliff of stone and brick soaring 12 meters into the sky. It wasn't just designed to stop you. It was designed to be psychologically crushing. And this main wall, it wasn't just a static barrier. No, it was alive. It was bristling with 96 massive towers. Each one of those towers was basically a self-contained fortress, a fighting platform 20 meters tall that could rain down an unbelievable amount of crossfire. A direct assault, that wasn't just a bad idea. It was basically suicide. Okay, so the city was a fortress on land, locked down. But what about the sea? This brings us to the second pillar of their survival, a truly terrifying secret weapon that gave them near total mastery of the waves. You know, this quote from the historian Theophanes really gets to the heart of what this weapon was. It wasn't just about sinking ships. It was about shattering an enemy's will to fight before the battle even really started. Just the sight of this stuff could cause a whole fleet to panic and break formation. And that weapon was, of course, Greek fire. Just think of it as the napalm of the medieval world. It was a liquid fire shot from these bronze siphons that, get this, could not be put out by water. In fact, throwing water on it only seemed to make it burn hotter, more intensely. The most crucial part of this whole thing was the secrecy. Yeah, we know some of the likely ingredients, but the complete formula, the exact mixture, the way they pressurized it, that was one of the most closely guarded secrets of the empire. To this day, we still haven't been able to perfectly replicate it. And this wasn't just a threat. It wasn't a theoretical deterrent. The tactical victories, they speak for themselves. In 678, Greek fire completely shattered a massive Arab fleet that was besieging the capital. In 941, it just incinerated an invading Rus fleet. It was the ultimate trump card that repeatedly turned a certain defeat into a devastating victory. So they had impenetrable walls and a terrifying superweapon. But the third, and maybe the most sophisticated, pillar of Byzantine survival was making sure that most enemies never even reached the city in the first place. This was the defense of the cunning mind. So, enter the Bureau of Barbarians. Now, the name sounds pretty ominous, right? But this wasn't some cloak and dagger spy agency like we think of today. It was something way more pragmatic, a cold, bureaucratic engine for information warfare and strategic manipulation. And it's actually really important to make a distinction here. The Bureau of Barbarians focused exclusively outward. It managed the barbarians, as they called them. The empire's internal spying, its domestic security, that was handled by a totally different group, the Agentis in Ribis. The Bureau's entire purpose was to weaponize information. Sure, they handled diplomatic protocol, but their real work was compiling these incredibly detailed encyclopedias on all their neighbors. They knew who to bribe, which rival claimant to a throne to support, what strategic marriage could turn a powerful enemy into a dependent ally. The goal was brutally simple. Make sure their enemies were always too busy fighting each other to ever unite against Constantinople.
So, when you put all three of these pillars together, you don't just see three separate strategies. What you see is a single, cohesive, and deeply cynical blueprint for survival.
The logic was just brutally effective. If an enemy was somehow strong enough to even get close to the capital, first they had to deal with the impenetrable walls, a meat grinder for any army. If they decided to attack by sea, they'd face the terrifying technology of Greek fire. But the real genius was the proactive intelligence that neutralized threats long before they ever showed up, making the other two layers defenses of last resort. And that was the core concept, a holistic system of paranoid engineering. Every single layer was designed with the assumption that the others might fail. The empire's 1,000-year survival, it wasn't a miracle. It was the direct result of this integrated, multi-layered, and deeply pragmatic approach to defense. It really leaves us with a fascinating question, doesn't it? The Byzantines built their entire survival strategy on the assumption that the world was permanently hostile and that threats were hiding around every corner. In our own unpredictable world, it really makes you wonder, what lessons, both good and bad, can we take from a paranoid state that so meticulously and so successfully engineered its own long life?